Hello all, James here. Now this will be actually a relatively quick video, despite the fact I constantly promise that kind of thing, but I wanted to say something, and this is not a backhanded compliment. AEW Dynamite as a show is better than both WWE RAW and WWE SmackDown combined. Now, once again, this isn't some swerve or a joke or anything. AEW Dynamite, the Spring Breakout edition, last night as I record this, was a very, very good show indeed. Now, does AEW still have a ton of issues that would mostly require a quick fix? Yes, absolutely, like the weird lighting and the overly dark venues and all the wrestlers and all the performers wearing black, and just one of those things that really bugs me. The wrestlers kicking out too many moves like it's PWG with a television contract, all that kind of thing. The usual criticisms apply, but the cold hard fact is this: AEW Dynamite last night didn't compel me to do what WWE programming, aside from the pay-per-views, has compelled me to do for weeks, if not months, and that is forward through the vast majority of it. So Dynamite had a great, lively, excited crowd in Boston, and it really was a great crowd, and it was a decent number as well that they actually got. The venue didn't look budget or wrong or jarring. The pace of the show was very, very good, and indeed, barring some overly long matches for my taste anyway, with the usual unnecessary kickouts. Once again, it was a great show, and the show had a happy ending as well, with the Death Riders, who are probably one of the most least over main event factions of all time, somehow losing, and not only losing, but losing their trios titles to Samoa Joe and Powerhouse Hobbs, and a third guy that I actually had to research and find out the name of was Shibata. Anyway, then there were the backstage vignettes and promos that actually forwarded through the story with Christian, with the Hurt Syndicate again. Swerve Strickland in the main event got a measure of revenge against the Young Bucks in a continuation of their angle that started off weird, but it's probably going to work out for the best all in all. And then, of course, the MJF and Hurt Syndicate segments after the Hurt Syndicate had wrestled, where MJF was trying to get involved, be a part of their group with 3 thumbs up, and he offered many, many women's and even a watch that he was wearing to get a thumbs up, which he still didn't. But that being said, what made me even more happy about that was that there was some internet crybabies out there saying, this isn't how women should be used in 2025. But, you know, like somehow Instagram doesn't exist. I mean, wake up. I mean, that's just life. Anyway, that pleased me even more. So, 5 matches, which is actually, for Dynamite, well below average. Normally it's 6 or 7 or 8. But the point is this, is that what AEW should be presenting is that. Whatever that was, more of that. The pace was good, but the thing was, there was nothing particularly spectacular on the show. Just good, solid stuff throughout. I mean, Tony Khan, just more of that, if you can. Anyway, now let's go to WWE. And to be honest, we can pick on any WWE show pretty much that hasn't been a pay-per-view, like Elimination Chamber or whatever, since the WWE Netflix deal was signed. But especially WWE SmackDown, which has been fucking interminable as of recent due to the 3-hour runtime. At least with Raw, they've got more experience going 3 hours. But the fact is that neither roster seems big enough to actually take on 3 hours, or they're not using everybody every single week, and you've got to give people a rest, I understand. But here's the thing. Dynamite over 2 hours sometimes doubles the amount of matches that Raw or SmackDown has over the course of 3 hours. And this is really going to be the crux of my criticism going forward. But it's just constant waiting around. It's the adverts for fanatics. It's get tattoos at the WrestleMania fan access, or whatever they're calling it now. Then there's the 7-minute entrances for Jey Uso, which I'm way beyond sick of now. Or Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins or whoever it is, where they just stroll out and it just takes forever. Then a match finally starts, and then, whoa, it's straight to commercial. And then if the match goes longer than 8 minutes, it seemingly goes through 2 commercial breaks. And then there's the storytelling as well. I mean, I like good drawn-out story, which WWE in 2023 and 2024 has been really good at. A slow enough pace where things drag out over months at a decent speed, at least, where if something happened, you will remember that segment or angle or whatever it is, and you probably still remember it. I mean, one great example is Paul Heyman telling Solo Sikoa that he was not his tribal chief. That's a perfect example. And one other example is that was actually quite a quick segment for what it was, but you sure remembered it anyway. Now, everything is not only moving, not just slowly or more slowly, but at a glacial speed. That I'm lapsing into a coma in every single show. And this is just the pace of the shows themselves as well as the stories as well. But I mean, there's other things that have been bugging me about WWE shows recently, like following up a heavy heat angle between Gunther and Jey Uso, right? So that was, 2.5 weeks ago as I record this. So 3 Raws ago. And that was really good, where Jey was zip-tied to the rope and then Gunther beat up Jimmy Uso. And then the week after, they had I don't know why they had it this way, but it worked out at least because it was, good and intense. Gunther and Jey Uso face-to-face where they didn't fight, they just talked to each other, which is still a bit odd. Should have been the other way around. But then they follow that up with 2 separate promos live in front of the crowd where Gunther says his piece at the beginning, and halfway through, Jey Uso, who's just seen a couple of weeks ago, his brother bludgeoned before him and humiliated in front of the entire world, then just comes out and bounces and is happy and then barely says anything, and that is the last thing you'll see before going into WrestleMania. Where is the hook to get me to care? That was 3 weeks ago. Everything is peaking at the wrong time. And that's one example. I'll give you another. Cody Rhodes and John Cena, which I personally, most people loved it. I personally was, because I do this anyway, and it's just, I guess it's my job now, is to pick through things, is it didn't completely have my interest straight away, because you had the great thing at Elimination Chamber, where John Cena turns heel, and then they just stood in the ring for 3 weeks straight, just talking to each other, not attacking each other until the last bit of the last one. But that was a couple of weeks ago, or 3 Raws ago, whatever it was now. Everything's peaking at the wrong time in WWE. This isn't going to be entirely about the build to WrestleMania, but these are the major stories, and they're all happening at the wrong time, to the point that now Cena's not been seen in weeks. I mean, you can't see him. But so all I notice is while Cody's pointing at belts on SmackDown, doing an overly long monologue once again, is that all I can see on my 8K TV is where the join is, where Cody Rhodes' yellow pancake makeup ends and his regular coloured neck skin appears. That's all I'm looking at. Anyway, Charlotte and Tiffany, another example. I mean, all those segments were terrible, quite frankly, but one of them actually worked out, and that was the SmackDown before last, where it seemed that I'm pretty sure, I think everyone's acknowledging it, is that they just went completely off the rails, completely off script, and just sniped each other. It was a terrible segment that somehow got people more interested. But my point is that this past Friday SmackDown, before I say that, the intrigue was, now after that horrible segment that ended up being great in a weird way, is that will they cooperate at WrestleMania? That was the intrigue. Do they hate each other so much that they won't wrestle a regular pro wrestling match and it'll devolve into a shoot? Now, it probably very likely wouldn't, but that was the intrigue. And then on Friday, they did fan footage, that kind of thing, where it's really obvious and make it all the way around social media, is that they work physically, because Charlotte attacked Tiffany in the car park of the arena. And so all I saw out of that was, oh, okay, well, we know that they can work physically and not kill each other in real life kind of thing. So the intrigue for that's gone. Anyway, but other builds aren't hooking me either. But this isn't about the builds to WrestleMania. This is about the shows themselves, which are becoming borderline unwatchable without forwarding through them after the fact. I watched Raw Tuesday morning, and what was it, 2 hours 35 or whatever it is, without the commercial breaks. I think I watched it in half an hour, because there is so little substance to these shows that you can just zip through them and they're still boring, and that's a problem. So, and this is 6 hours a week they're pumping out of this stuff, which is just really boring. It's just these long drawn out empty spaces of nothingness between occasional segments that might actually matter. And if that first Raw Netflix wasn't an omen, I mean, it really, really was. But here's something else. So few matches for so much money for the ticket-buying fans. And by the way, we'll get to tickets again in a second, is that there's apparently still 9,000, as of a couple of weeks ago, it's probably less now, 9,000 tickets out for WWE RAW following WrestleMania at the T-Mobile Arena as of a couple of weeks ago. But I'm wondering if simply nobody can afford to go to all these shows, including Raw and blah, 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 after WrestleMania, or everyone's going to be wrestled out, I guess. But I'm wondering if the slump is going to be greater than usual following WrestleMania, because there's always a business slump after WrestleMania. I say always, there's usually, a downtrend, apart from the Raw as far as viewership goes. That's usually the most watched Raw of the year. But I'm wondering after this, just people will just stop buying tickets to the shows as much now, because they've had a year, they've had months of this, maybe a year, maybe 18 months of this. But now they're just giving the consumer less than ever for their money, which is more than ever. But anyway, WWE really needs to take a leaf out of AEW's book. Speed up the shows, get more people on the shows, cut out some of the fluff, because sooner or later, how about like less than 15 minutes worth of looking at B-list celebrities that they paid to be in there, or somehow in a conjunction with Netflix they have to talk to or interview or whatever. Because, anyway, sooner or later, this will bite WWE back, giving so little for and asking so much in return. I mean, for $550 for a floor seat 12 rows back from the front, that's how much it's costing just for a regular Raw. Let me give you an example of what WWE gave you from Raw this past Monday. And keep in mind, how much money you'll spend, but I'll get to that in a second. Here's the card. Bayley versus Liv Morgan. Rey Mysterio versus Julius Creed. AJ Styles versus Karrion Kross. And Finn Balor versus Penta. And that was it. Let's say you want floor seats, not even particularly great ones. You've got a family of 4. Well, that'll be $2,200 plus booking fees for what is essentially half a step up of a card for Velocity. That is what you're getting. That is a crappy card right there. And Cody Rhodes wasn't on the show. John Cena wasn't on the show. The main event was a talking segment with Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Punk. And I'm in the minority. I'm a big CM Punk fan. Not as much of a fan as the other two, but I'm a big CM Punk fan. Couldn't care less about that triple threat match either, because it's got nothing really on the line. I mean, you can argue Paul Heyman's on the line or something, but there's no number one contenders thing. It just doesn't strike me as a WrestleMania 41, at least night one, or main event of either night, but, you know, it's more night one than night two. But even that's not doing it for me at the moment. And once again, I'm more trying to praise AEW here than just damn WWE. But WWE really needs to pull their fingers out with all this. I mean, it's pure shit what they're offering, these weekly shows. Here's the thing. So $2,000. All right, let's say you want to go in the first tier, which is, you know, opposite the ring. That's going to set you back over $1,000 for a family of 4. And then once again, it's main event. It's WWE main event, the 1 hour B show, quality stuff that they're giving you basically. And once again, all the big stars aren't wrestling, are not even there. But anyway, WWE are treating the consumer once again with complete contempt. It's just so bottom line, CEOs in suits running this thing, because it's so sanitized and so, dare I say, overproduced. I mean, it looks great, but I mean, I used to think Raw used to be overproduced back in the day, but now it's so glossy and so shiny and that kind of thing. I think it's actually affecting sort of the enjoyment of the wrestling as well. But WWE is, in my opinion, going to go through a drop in attendance eventually when the fans realise en masse how little they're getting for the extortionate prices. So anyway, AEW had a better week on the main shows, and they need to continue this trend of outperforming WWE on their weekly shows, because quite frankly, it isn't hard at this point. But Dynamite decimated Raw and SmackDown with the quality of their shows. They need to keep that up. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, etc. I'll see you for whenever I make the next video, whenever I have time to record another video, and I'll see you for them.